Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host.
Good evening. We've been having trouble with this Zoom tonight. We're not sure what's wrong with it, but hopefully we'll get it straightened out and not have any more glitches through the show. But it has really been a mess so far. But I do want to welcome everybody and thank you so much for coming. Hope you'll return many times and tell your friends about us so that they can also join us. Before we start the show, I want to introduce Father Ron Walters for our evening prayer. Father.
O God, as we express our creativity in creating in miniature the world around us, may we marvel at the beauty and genius which created the world and instilled in us a portion of your great knowledge and wisdom. Give success to the work of our hands, O God. Amen.
Thank you so much, Father Ron. We really do appreciate your contributions that you make to our show. I also want to thank Martin Breckbilt, NMRA. Martin has, again, posted our schedule in his magazine that he edits, O-Scale Trains. And Martin, I really do appreciate it. Every little bit of help we can get to tell people about what our shows are about is really great. And thank you so much for participating with us. Before we start the show, I want to talk about our money situation and try to bring you up to date on what's happening. I found a modeler this last week who has agreed to start a special segment on our shows, probably early sometime next year, maybe February. And it's going to be youth in modeling. This is a young man that Mark Poldendorf had as his guest on his hobby shop show a couple of weeks ago. And I was so impressed with the young man that I contacted him and asked him if he'd like to try to start a segment on our show about young people in modeling, youth in modeling. And he thought about it for a while and said that he'd like to do that. So we're going to start that. And we're doing everything that we can now to try to bring more youth into our shows and to have them participate and try to find out what their interests are and how we can model railroading. With that said, we've also started, as you're aware, a scholarship program this year for the first time. And right now we have a total budget for this year of about $1,825. That includes the $1,000 for the scholarship and about $450 to apply for a 501c3 designation, because as we started asking people for contributions and companies for contributions, the first question was, are you a 501c3? And evidently what I'm finding out is for us to be able to raise significant money, we had to become a 501c3. It's like you have the gold standard for it if you have that designation. Not only that, but Jeffrey Jordan, who is an attorney, has volunteered to provide the professional legal pro bono to us to help us acquire the 501c3. And that I can't thank Jeffrey enough and his law firm for agreeing to have him do this. It means so much that we have the professional help to be able to actually achieve this. How long it's going to take us, I don't know. Hopefully it'll be sometime before mid next year. Right now, we're in the process of trying to figure out what all we need to do and so forth. And so we haven't really gotten down that road very far, but I'm so thrilled that Jeffrey volunteered to help us in this. We also have gotten a lot of help from Larry Price. Larry sent me an email today having to bow out of any more participation at this time because of other responsibilities that he has in his life. He just doesn't have time right now to give to this that's needed. So we're going to be adding another person or two to our committee that's formed to provide all of the information that a modeler is going to need to apply, and then how we're going to select the modeler. So that's coming along. I'm sorry to lose Larry. He made a tremendous contribution while he was involved with us. But I do understand that life comes into play, and he does have other responsibilities. Going back to money, as I said, we have a total budget of about $1,800. About $1,500 of that is for the scholarship and for the 501c3 that we need. And the rest of it, about 300 or so, is required to actually run our shows each month or each week. Of that, we have around $1,300 that has either been pledged or that we have in the bank right now. So I'm happy about that, but we still need $500 in order to accomplish our goal. And that's so important, I think, for the first year. Hopefully this won't be as expensive in future years because we won't have the 501c3 application that we have to pay for. And the fees for it are all either go to the federal government or state government for their fees to obtain the 501c3, because all of the legal work will be pro bono from Jeffrey. But we need roughly $500 to complete our budget. So if any of you can see your way clear to help us, either with a commitment of funds through our Patreon account, New Tracks Modeling, or by watching our videos, and particularly the advertising that you may see on and you may like, that shows up during our videos, because that's the way that we get paid from YouTube. I thought that we were doing very well with YouTube the month of October, because we raised $60 from YouTube that month. November, so far, we have raised $15. So for some reason, everybody either stopped watching the videos or stopped watching the advertising, because without watching the advertising, then we don't get anything at all from the people who watch the videos. So if you can't make a financial contribution to us through Patreon, our Patreon account, I hope that you'll find some videos with advertising that you like, and so you can watch it, so that we can make some kind of money coming to us from the people who watch our YouTube videos later on. The last videos that we did, we had a total of about 500 people that watched it. And we made very, very little money from all of those views. So it's obvious that during October, a lot of people were watching the advertising, and then they figured maybe that they'd watched enough and made enough contribution, they stopped or something. I don't know what happened, but we went from $60 in October to $15 in November, and that just won't get us where we need to be. So I hope that you'll be able to contribute something, help us, because I do think that being the only show that is 100% focused on modelers, I think it's important that we show the young modelers, particularly now that I'm able to get a segment started on our show aimed specifically at young modelers, that we want to work with them and that we want them part of our hobby. And most importantly, we're willing to try to meet some of their needs educationally. So with that said, now let me talk about modeling lifestyle. Our next show is tomorrow night. It features George Sara, and he's going to be talking about the Bricktown Model Railroading Association and Museum. And we have a short video that we'd like to show you about George and the Bricktown Association and Museum. Phil, if we could run that, please.
Join the modeling lifestyle at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on December 1st, where we will feature the modeling lifestyle of George Sara. George is a key member of the Bricktown Model Railroad Association, building a huge new club layout.
I love the sound of a whistle.
And now that you've heard me beg for money from you, I'll now start begging for volunteer help, particularly on our website, and to run our shows. Phil and Pat and Alan and John, who are really the prime people that are now involved in running our show, they need help because there's an awful lot that goes into producing one of these. And we do the Wednesday show weekly, and now we're doing the Thursday show every other week. So if you have any time at all that you can donate a little help, we sure would appreciate it. Same goes for our website. Jim Allen and his group are doing a great job, but they need help because there's just a lot to do to keep the website current and to keep it active. So if you can donate a little bit of your time, we sure would appreciate it, because everything that we do is volunteer effort, volunteer time. So we need your help and support. My email is jimkellow, Kellow, at newtracksmodeling.com. And just send me an email and we'll get together and get you involved however you'd like to be involved. With that said, our upcoming build-alongs, we have several tonight. We have 3 tonight for you. All of them are different, and I think all of them are fantastic. The one that we have coming up starting in December is Berkshire Valley Models. They have a bay window home that's located in Colorado, that Bill Davis is going to be building in O scale. It's available both O and HO scale, and there's a 20% discount off the model for anybody that wants to buy one in either one of those scales and build it along with Bill. So in addition to the 3 that we got tonight, that's the one that we've got for December. And then we have some others coming up in January, February, and March that I'll be talking about on shows in December. Our next My Build, and Chris is not here tonight. He's had to go out of town on business. Our next My Build is scheduled for December the 21st. If you have a model that you'd like to show, that you've built or that you're in the process of building and talk about, please send Chris an email at railrunner130 at hotmail.com. And he'll get it in the show for you. He has been having a little trouble with his email. So the sooner you can send him an email so he can confirm that he's received it and that you're a part of the December show, the better off you're going to be. We had, I think, 7 members show models last week for the November show. And I thought it was fantastic. I'd like to see more of you participate because I do think that the My Build is an important part of us trying to show other people what's being built, how it's being built, and the people that are building. And that's what the My Builds are all about. Now, with that said, I want to introduce to you Hank Primas, who is doing our quick tips. Hank, unfortunately, couldn't be with us last week. So Hank, welcome. And I assume Hank is not with us this week either.
I don't see him on there.
Okay, that's 2 weeks in a row for Hank. Let me then introduce Gary Shurgold, who does our bits and pieces. Gary, welcome.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing not too bad.
Good.
Tonight on Bits and Pieces, screen 2. I hope everyone can see that. Okay, slide mode. Okay, Bits and Pieces tonight. What we're going to talk about tonight is these wonderful things here that I think most of us get from the pharmacy. And they're usually filled with pills. What I do is I collect these and I have my family save them for me. And I utilize them for just about everything. So what we're going to do is we have all these wonderful things we can put in them. Now, when things are put in them like this, they're not too stable. So what I do is I glue them onto a piece of plastic in the numbers that I want to put them in. And as you can see, everything is now stable and right there handy for picking up whatever you need, a pencil, little tools, brushes, etc. Now, one of the other things you can do is you can take some tape and tape them together, as you can see here. Or you can get real fancy like I did. I dabbled in woodworking, and I got some very large ones at the back, some small ones in the front. And as you see, you can put tools, you can put everything in these. Now, what do? We save these. We also save the tops. Now, the tops are fantastic for mixing small amounts of paint or glue, using them. And when we're done, we just throw them away in the garbage. Now, I remove the inner part of these, and I use these, the inner part, so when I'm using different types of glue. And the outer parts make great little palettes for mixing paint, small amounts of paint or stain or whatever you're going to be using. And that's Bits and Pieces for this week, Jim.
Well, Gary, I appreciate it. That's some great ideas. How expensive are those, Gary?
They're not expensive at all because you get them from the pharmacy when you get your pills, and don't throw them in the garbage because they're free.
I see. Well, I do want to tell people one thing. I got an email on our website from a viewer who said, I'm kind of disappointed that you keep talking about free this and free that on the show, because I think you're taking business away from local hobby shops, and I think we ought to be supporting local hobby shops. Well, I've been kidding Gary and Hank too about I'm really pleased about a lot of the stuff they're showing is free. It's not meant to take business away from the hobby shops or anybody else. It's just a fact that, isn't it great that we've got stuff laying around that we're probably going to throw away, that if we just think about it, there's probably a good use that we can make of it in our model railroad. And that's what Gary has been showing us, and that's what Hank has been doing. And so to me, it's free stuff that it's creative, and it's not meant to be taking business away from anybody. It's just using the stuff that's there that we throw away anyway. So I'm sorry that he may have misunderstood what we're trying to do here, Gary, but thanks so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Jim.
Yes, sir. Well, now I want to turn to our first build along, and this is by Michael Groves, the owner of Darwin Lighting Without Wires. Michael, welcome, and thanks so much for doing this. Before you start, I do want to mention one thing. I didn't know this. I found somebody sent me an email the other day saying, Michael's company is for sale. And I said, no, it can't be for sale. He's doing too much. And he's on my show and he's promoting the heck out of his company. He can't be selling his company. So I sent it to you and you stopped back and you said, yep, it's time for somebody to take it to the next level.
That's absolutely true, Jim. Yep, we've got it through the first level, which was building it for 4 years with grandchildren and getting their education covered. And now we realize that, boy, this thing's got great legs, and we just can't really apply the marketing muscle that's needed to cover not only the US, but particularly Europe and then Japan, which is apparently about 15 times the market size of the American market. So if this is really a value, we need to sort of step aside and let somebody bigger take it over and do what they need to do.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with it, because I've been really impressed with what you've shown us and the technology. I'd never heard of it before. That's why I asked so many dumb questions, I guess. But I really am enjoying what you're doing. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Jim. Well, last week, what we did was we worked on this little house. If you remember, it's actually a train station. And the first things that we did was we actually put some foil into the roof. And that's what I got there. And we also have this little insert that I was building at the time. Let me just sort of pull that out. Yep. Okay, got it. So I made a little frame in here, and I put, you can see the sort of inside of a train station there. I've put nothing on the roof of it, but I've put, that sort of just a paper picture inside it. Very simple. And so that's going to go up into making a room, basically. Sorry, I have to get up to be able to see this. Stick that straight back up in there. Got it. All right. So now I've got that room. Oh, that's a bit wonky. I don't want it like that. Come on. Got it. All right. Excellent. All right. So what I want to do today is we're going to really talk about how on earth do you start thinking about lighting this building? So I mentioned before that with something like a 1.5 millimeter fiber, I could light this whole train building. You know what? That's going to be too bright. Now I've compartmentalized it into 3 rooms, basically, and one of them's pretty small. So I'm going to show you, let me see how I can do this. I'm going to have to pick up my computer and push my wife's away at the moment. So let's see if we can see this. All right. I'm turning some lighting on here. Whoops-a-daisy. Okay, I hope you can see this. What I've got, in fact, I've got one light going up into the building. You can't see this one yet, but I've got a little light poking up from this piece of homosote. I put it at 45 degrees, and it's going to actually shine inside that building on that backdrop. I've got another light coming up through a piece of tubing. So I just put a piece of aluminum tubing in here and stuck a fiber up it. And then I've got another one, which you actually can't see either, but I've just got it down again, 45 degrees, and it's going to actually light up the building. So I'm just going to turn those lights on. So I just got a nice remote so I can do that. That'll make it a bit easier to see those lights now. So there's the light that's going to go up into the inside of this building. There's the light that I put on into a piece of, basically it's a piece of aluminum tubing. I often use just stirring straws. And there's another light down here. So let me just put this building now back over these. Position it where I want it. Turn down my big light here. And you get a bit of an idea of what this building should look like. Whoops. No, it doesn't mean I just lose all my, oh dear. Sorry, I just lost everything. Then I tipped everything off. So you just hold with me a moment. I'll just put these fibers back into my lamp lighter. That's the nice thing when you get your fibers out of the lamp lighter, just fall out, put them back in again. Doesn't take a moment. So let's get that back in. I should have music playing while you have to wait for me to do this, but there we go. All right, sorry about that. So let's see. Whoops. I need to do that. Sorry. Okay. So what you can see is you can see inside now. There's the little room inside, and if I had a better camera, you'd actually see the picture inside it. I've got that one piece of tubing that comes up through here. You can see the tubing there. It's actually coming up behind a wall. So normally, and if I won't be able to see anything of that fiber, no matter how I look through these windows, I'll never see a fiber. All I'll see is the effect of the lighting. The other thing I've done is I've got a spotlight down here. I'm going to move that spotlight up, if I can. And you can see that light there. Now, obviously, it rather overglows on the camera. But if I wanted to, that could be a nice spotlight on the front of that building. Or probably not useful on front of a train station like that, but very easy. And you can adjust it very, very simply, just pulling it up and down. And usually I put a bush in front of it. That way, you actually wouldn't see anything of that light. But now I want to introduce you to another thing that I did, which was, if you take this, you can see this light underneath here. Well, that light is because I've actually got a fiber in there. You can see this fiber is glowing quite brightly there. Again, these are all 1 millimeter fibers, so they're quite small. And one of the things I did was I took some, remember we used this aluminum foil trick? Well, I'm going to see if I'm dexterous enough here to take some foil and put it underneath there, which I'm probably not. I'm not dexterous enough, so I'm just going to have to do this by hand without tweezers. I'm not very good with. Okay. Okay. Now, I don't know if you could really see the effect of that, but that's made that light a lot brighter. So what I've got is a fiber sticking out and just going into a piece of aluminum foil and then reflecting down. So actually it looks as though there's plenty of light there, and you'd never see the glare of that light in your face. So that's sort of really basically a very simple way to light your building. Now, I've just put a couple of slides together because I actually wanted to accentuate something about this building lighting. So I'm just going to remove this table for a moment so that I can show you that. Right. That's the nice thing about fibers. I just can disconnect them easily and they're done for. So I'm just going to share my screen. And hopefully I can find, yes, okay. Right, okay, there's my slide that I want to show. And I'm just going to show this. Right, okay, all right. So what you should be able to see there is I've actually got a 1.5 millimeter fiber sticking into that building. So that's the building you've just seen. It's sticking up so that it's facing that back wall. And there's a bit of a challenge there. You can't see anything of what's going on with that back wall, can you?
No.
But let me diminish it by 20, actually down to 25%. So this would be like taking a 0.75 millimeter fiber, so that's about a quarter the intensity of a 1.5. And now, if my camera was even better, you'd start to see all the structure and what's inside the building. So it's a really important thing is to not overlight a building, especially on the insides, because you'll never see what's inside. It will just be a glare. And this is really what it should look like on your layout. Obviously, I've got a bit of a glare there. I've got my fiber sitting in here. And what I'm missing is that one that's over the door. If I had that on, I could see it's quite a nice effect on this building and very, very simple to do. So over to you guys. Questions?
Anyone have any questions for Michael?
I have one. The smaller the diameter, the less light you'll get, right?
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
And how small do you make them?
So we don't make any of the fibers. I'll let you into that secret. We let the Japanese make them. Mitsubishi makes them. They're excellent quality fiber. And we actually buy them down to 0.5 millimeter. So I use those in trees. That's my main use. You just stick them up into a tree and they just give you little points of light. And it just looks like that sort of fairy garden creation. 0.75, I use those for car headlights, tail lights as well. I would use them inside that building in that little room that I then created. Then we go to 1 millimeter fiber. And so as you go up each of those, you're literally doubling the amount of light that can come through. 1 millimeter is what we use for all of our HO lights, street lights. They're what we use for 1 millimeter is for N-scale buildings. And then you go up to 1.5, and that's what we use for our usual HO buildings, as well as for O-scale lights. And then we have 2 millimeter. If you really want to blow your brains out, so to speak, don't look down the fiber. It's so bright, you'll be seeing stars for ages. It's a little ropey, but that's really great for the O gauge guys. They like that stuff.
Thank you, Mike.
Michael, thank you so very much.
Mike, this is Phil Edom. Just one quick question. So you had mentioned earlier the idea of running a fiber and notching the fiber to get light output.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried doing that in a building where you run a fiber into the building, run it around the building and notch it where you want lights? You have a single fiber for a building that's notched where you want the light output versus running 3 or 4 fibers into the building.
I have not. However, customers have. I've actually had some customers, they didn't notch it so much, they actually scraped it. So there was this guy, Steve Juranics, and he explained that he had this beautiful building. Actually, I had it last week on the presentation. When you looked at the back of it, there were quite a number of fibers running through there, but he'd actually taken some where he just scraped them so that he's actually just seeing a gentle glow from those. And it was just giving this really nice gentle glow from the sort of the broken windows in this building, and quite a nice effect. I would have told him it probably wouldn't be possible to do it, but what do I know? Customers always prove you wrong. So the answer is, yeah, it's a good idea. I think notching it probably less so, but to be honest with you, I've only notched it for the outside effects. I made Christmas lights, lights even around a Christmas tree or something like that. So maybe I should spend some time trying it. The problem is I get no time in my basement other than sending off packages and designing up new ideas.
I have a question. Is there a way to use fiber to imitate neon?
Yes, there is, which is very odd. Again, I think one of the slides I showed last week was a guy called Paul Boccadero. He's in Maryland, and he took a Woodland Scenics cinema, and he actually took that, and it's got a sort of neon light at the top of it, but of course there's no light in it. And he actually took a fiber, he scraped it, painted it red, fed it through there. Bingo. He had beautiful neon light. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I went, how on earth did you do that, Paul? So, yeah. Great question, Jeff.
Thank you.
Right. Well, I won't take more of your time, but wonderful. Thank you so much for having me back on. It's certainly great to get these questions, and thanks for this time with you, Jim.
Just one question, if I could. I've been mentioning neon lighting, like, the neon lighting you see hanging in stores or in bars in the windows, maybe you see in coolers or something. How tight a radius could you make with these to imitate those letters?
I would change the approach. I would have initially gone that approach, but my grandson did an approach where he actually took a whole load of fibers. So he's got a whole load of fibers. He painted them black, and then he actually notched them with a utility knife, and basically it created a neon sign, and it's a sign that says Trenton makes the world takes. It's what's on the bridge, as train bridge as you go into Trenton, New Jersey. So that's the way I would do that type of signage, would probably be like that. And you created really nice glow, because you get this, you can color it red and you get a really nice neon sign out of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question.
It's amazing what the technology that you're using, Michael, can achieve. It's just experimenting and trying.
It really is fun, Jim. I never expected this. In the first year when I did this, I had no earthly idea. Just did it for fun. Just did it to make it easy for customers to light their buildings and street lights and everything like that. So that's what makes this tremendously fun to do. So I'll be disappointed when I do sell the company, but I'll probably be doing some other fun things,
Well, we hope so, and hope you'll let us know what they are and come back and share them with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim, very much.
See you next week. Thank you.
See you. Bye.
All right, that was great. And again, I learned an awful lot. I can't imagine all the things that he talked about you can do with that technology. I had no idea. All right, so up next, we have another build along. This one with Jeff Dozier, who owns Hangman Creek Dioramas. So Jess, thank you for coming. Please join us.
I think we're missing Jess at this point.
Okay. All right, so let me go then to Alan Rogers, who owns the company Fine Creations for his church that I think is a fantastic model. Alan, welcome.
Thank you so much. Just appreciate you having me, Jim. So I'm going to try to show you one of the components in the kit first thing, and I believe the camera on the computer is picking it up. This is the resin impregnated board that we often see in model railroad kits. And there are a lot of different names for it, technical names, but this is what I use to design my window and door frames and some other trim components on the kit. This is HO scale, by the way. It's a very stable material. The only thing is, I like to use acrylic paints, and this stuff is very thirsty with paint. So whether you're using an airbrush to paint it, personally, I like to use this type of a roller. This is a trim roller from Home Depot. And I probably would put a couple of coats of paint on. So at this stage in the kit building phase, we want to make the windows. We want to get all the windows made, and then we'll install them on the walls, and then we'll install the walls together around the foundation. So those are going to be the steps. So I want to talk to you all about how to manufacture the windows. There's an old technology called decoupage from the 60s and 70s. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here real quick. Let's see. Here we go. So this is decoupage. This is just a artwork, very nice one, by the way. So we used to see these in the 60s and 70s, and the school kids would make these decoupage plaques and give them to grandma to hang up on her wall. And the only problem is sometimes grandma would end up with these images on her kitchen wall that she had to try and hide behind her refrigerator, and just didn't have the heart to take them down. But moving on here, the cement that I like to use to manufacture these window parts is Tester's clear parts cement and window maker. And the reason I like to use this is it's water-based, and the way I make my stained glass windows, it does not cause the colors to bleed on the paper. So when I'm making stained glass windows for either the O scale or HO scale versions of the kit, I'm just printing them on 20-pound bond paper. And I know we got into discussion some time ago about how we would do stained glass windows in a church, and some of you guys suggested maybe using transparencies. I tried that approach. You can get some transparencies that you can print in an inkjet printer, and the images are fine, but the problem is they're too transparent, in my opinion. So you have the ability to look through the window and see the light bulb or fiber optics light source inside the building. You need something more opaque. And the technique that I use, it renders an opaque, I think more of a realistic looking stained glass window. And if you look at a stained glass window on a church, you'll find that they're not very often glossy. They have more of a matte look because they're composed of many different components that are soldered together with lead solder. So this is the back of that sheet of stained glass windows. I have my acetate window glazing that you can see that I've glued on the back of those windows using the window cement. And you just want to put enough of a coating on there where it adheres well, but you don't want to make a puddle because when you try and cut them apart, the paper will degrade and you'll ruin them. But moving on, this isn't very pretty, but you just take a hobby knife and after everything's dry and cut out around the outline of your acetate, you end up with this. And then after you install the window frame, it looks like this. So you can see the window frame hides a lot of the imperfections that you got when you cut this out. It's a little more forgiving. And I tried to design these where there's a good fit when you actually end up putting this on the church building. So that's what we're doing at this stage. And next week, I'll start talking to you about assembling the walls together. So do we have any questions?
I think that's a great.
Alan, that glue, you can just pick it up at Amazon, you expect?
Well, I buy it at Hobby Lobby and Michael's sometimes.
Okay,
But
I'm going to Michael's
Amazon
next
for
week. I'll
sure,
look
and
for it.
eBay has it as well.
Okay, thanks.
What is it called again, Alan?
It's Testers. Let me pull that picture back up here. I apologize. I forgot here. Let me just get back there and we'll look. It is Testers Clear Part Cement and Window Maker.
Chester's is what I used to make my model airplanes.
Still in business.
I'll be darned. Anybody else have any questions for Alan? Well, Alan, thank you so very much. I love the way you did those windows, though. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Well, now I want to talk about three-rail scale modeling. This is using three-rail track and cars and locomotives, but everything else on the model is scale. And it's some of the modelers that use this for your model railroad have some of the most beautiful layouts you've ever seen in your life. And we have some of them here tonight that we'd like to talk to and share with you what's involved and what's happening in three-rail scale model railroading. First one is Don Lambert. Don, please join us.
Thank you.
And Don, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How'd you get involved in this part of the hobby with three-rail and then scale scenery?
Sure. So I think I started like many kids with a Lionel set at Christmas. I played with that for a few years. I think that my story is the same as many people. At some point, I got into girls and cars and put the trains away for a little bit. I had a few sons, and we got the trains back out, and we enjoyed them for a few years. And then my son and I decided it was time to build a new layout, and decided we wanted to go for more realism. But we already had an investment, so we decided that we didn't want to not be able to run trains. Like I've got three-rail trains that were my father's back from the 50s, and we've had fun, and we've put those in the layout and run those as well. His old Mark's train works just fine on our three-rail layout.
Yeah.
But when we are looking at what are we doing, we're using scale couplers, we're using scale cars. Like many modelers, we have an era that we're after, and so we're trying to be consistent there. Yes, we have some store-bought models on the layout, but at the same time we're using new technologies to build our things that we want for ourselves. So using a CNC router, using a laser cutter, 3D printing, all these types of newer technologies. I think the technology in some respects is part of the fun, to learn how to do new things, to make what we want, because there are many things that if we didn't make it ourselves, we wouldn't have it.
Well, it sounds like you're doing all the things that most scale modelers are doing. You're just doing it with three-rail track.
I would say so. And I wouldn't call myself a master modeler or anything, but there's nothing that I can't look at and figure out how to break that building or that structure down into component parts, and then figure out how do I make the boxes, make the circles, put things together, glue things together, and come up with something that is a pretty good representation of what the real solution was.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. Next, I want to bring in with us John Robert Coy and his wife, Connie Jones Coy.
Yeah, we'll unmute so you can hear us. We are the owners of the O Scale Glacier Line, and our story about getting into 3-rail actually started a long time ago. Of course, we got the typical Lionel train around the Christmas tree years ago. Then I became an HO scale modeler for the better part of 40 years. And then this is where the story takes a twist. I actually got 3-rail trains from my son just to get a start, try to get him interested in model railroading. And unfortunately, that never quite took off. But when I set up the 3-rail trains for him down in our basement, I walked downstairs one day still planning to build our HO empire in the basement. And I looked across the room and I saw the O scale trains, and my eyes are not the greatest in the world. And we could see the markings on them. They're a lot easier to handle. They track much better. You don't have to clean the tracks nearly as much. And so that was the start of me trying to figure out how I was going to tell Connie that we were going to get rid of all the thousands of dollars worth of HO scale stuff, and then spend thousands and thousands of dollars in 3-rail stuff. And actually, I considered 2-rail at one time, but obviously everyone knows 3-rail is a lot more plentiful. But the biggest difference for me is I wanted to run bigger engines and cars. And in 2-rail, you need a 10-foot diameter curve. And in 3-rail, you can get by in a 6-foot curve. I mean, most of our curves are bigger than the 6-foot curve, but still that was basically the deciding factor in us going to a 3-rail and us doing a scale layout. Easy decision for us. I mean, we love Glacier National Park. And so that's what our railroad basically is. It's BNSF's, the original Great Northern lines run from Shelby, Montana to Whitefish, Montana. And the only difference between this and HO for us is just the physical size of the train, because the design of the layout and the way everything is structured and set up and the theme is exactly the same as it is in HO, but it's just a lot easier for us to enjoy the larger trains. And so that's been going on for 13 years now. I'm really proud to say we've been in multiple magazines, and we're on 2 professionally distributed videos, which is really nice because, you know, one thing common about all layouts, eventually one day they're gone. So we treasure having those videos because they'll always be a great keepsake. But right now we've got a crew that comes down and we run every other Sunday night during the winter months, and we all have a real good time doing that.
Well, you know, it sounds like we were supposed to have 2 other people here join us this evening, but they couldn't make it. So I'm sorry. I apologize to everybody about that, but that's what happens with life. You know, it's just things come up and you have to change your plans. Let me ask you this. In O scale, there are all different kinds of scales. There's 1/4 inch, there's 1764, there's proto 48, there's 7 millimeter, there's 143. And you know, it gets confusing after a while. What about 3-rail? Is there a gauge, a scale, and that's it?
Several I don't know how they determine what they're going to build, probably by just how much money they think they're going to make. And I think typically a lot of times the manufacturers make undersized equipment because obviously you can have smaller curves, and everyone is not blessed with a basement. It took me 45 years to get a basement of my own. I always wanted one. It took 45 years to get one of those, and they're kind of expensive. And yeah, so we got that. But what I personally consider O scale is 148. That's the accepted NMRA standard, and that's what I go by. Except not only does 3-rail track have 3 rails, it's also really 5 feet. About a 5 feet gauge between the rails in scale. And I have some really, really good friends who I dearly love and respect. And they are much, much, much better modelers than I will ever be, who are a bit crazy, the Proto 48 guys, and they'll scoot those rails in about a millimeter or two. So they will have the exact spacing and hand lay all their track and switches. And they have my greatest respect and admiration, but I'm just not going that far.
I understand. Well,
Yeah,
let me ask.
I agree. I look at 148, and you know, again with the wider rails, we do have the deeper flanges as well. Although we've done a good job of laying our track, and I can run the two rail short flanges on our layout without any problem. So you know, that's the nice thing about it is that, again, it's versatile. I can run very old. I can run, you know, modern two rail without any. I mean, two rail trucks, two rail wheel sets, you know, that are scale, because the track work was done well.
I didn't know that you could run two rail trucks on three rail track. I did not know that.
The challenges are in the switches. You know, they'll hunt a little bit. You can actually shim the frogs a little bit and help the scale wheels through. But that's about it. You can pretty much go.
I'll be darned.
The other thing you can do, it's kind of a cheat, is sometimes you can, you know, run basically just replace one set of wheels in a truck with the deeper flanges if you find you have problems, and you can sometimes get away with that. But yeah, it's like everything. It's just a problem. So how do you solve that next problem?
Yeah, in O scale there are so many choices. It's so confusing, and of course it's like HO scale, and it depends on the height of the rail. Because if you get a real scale rail like the Proto 48 guys, you can't run three rail anything on it. You know,
of course.
It just strictly depends on it is amazing the differences in two rail and in three rail scale. There's a lot to know. Like I said, I'm a 40-year HO guy, so it was a steep learning curve. But the thing I do appreciate the absolute best about O scale is they stay on the track. And I always tell everyone, I said, if you're doing a switching layout, trust me, you want to get O scale trains, because I had 40 years worth of issues. I don't care how perfect the track is or how well weighted the cars are. They just do not track as well as O scale trains. And when O scale trains derail, there's usually a huge crash and a bang. It's much more dramatic and more fun and entertaining.
You sound like you speak from experience, sir.
Oh yes. we had a train going around our curved trestle one night, and everybody in the basement ran with their camera, because somehow the cars, I don't know how it happened, they all literally pulled to the inside, and they literally were hanging in the air between the engine and the rear of the train over the ravine.
And they didn't fall.
And they didn't fall. And how I know they didn't fall, it was amazing. That should have been a good magazine picture.
Yeah. Well, you know, you all talk about O gauge, Lionel 3 rail. You talk about it as if it's scale model railroading. So to you, there's really no difference here.
Other than it having three rails. But even there are some HO people I know that are, well, I don't know how you want to put in a nice tactful way, because I like all modelers and all scales, but the only people that I know that have perfect scale track are Proto 48 fine scale modelers. The hand lay and do, because all the HO track, I mean, it may have two rails, but it's still not prototypical track. And it's just not. So I don't get hung up on the track. And I'll tell you, the most interesting thing is, anyway, from a psychological point of view, when people are looking at a railroad track, they know that trains have two rails. So we'll have groups come down into the basement. When they're done, they'll leave, they'll come upstairs, and I'll always ask them, I say, how many rails did the track have on it? And they'll give me a real puzzled look, like, what a stupid question. I said, no, I'm serious. How many rails are on the track downstairs? And they're like, 2. No, there were 3. There really were. They're just between the backgrounds and the scenes and weathering the rails, and you don't think about it. And I mean, if you know it's there, obviously, and you're looking for it, but it's so blended in that, I mean, it's just not that big of an issue with me. But that's a personal choice, pretty much, as when people are arguing what height their layout should be. It's just a matter of preference.
I mean, in the end, we're and I don't care what scale you're using, we're all building an illusion, right? We're trying to get you to see what we want you to see. We're trying to get you to see something that's not even necessarily really there. We want, so I want to draw you into the scene. I don't, if you're looking at, the third rail, I've not done good in the rest of the modeling, right? I haven't drawn you into the scene. You're not looking at the city, at the buildings, at the scenery, at the way our layout's set up. It's set up with 3 or 4 vignettes, and you can't see the entire layout from one position. You have to move around the room to see things, and that's intentional. That helps the trains disappear, because real trains disappear for a while. And again, if I'm doing a good job with the illusion, you're not thinking about the rail.
Right, and that's one of the things that we do is we're in the process of upgrading our buildings. In the beginning, we had some plastic buildings that they were okay, but I mean, you can only do so much with the plastic building, and paint it, weather it, and everything. And eventually you've got to build, you got to scratch build something, but it's got to look more real. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and in these days and times, they make more buildings in scenery and background and O scale than they ever have before. And I am not taking a shot at any manufacturer by saying it, because they're wonderful, they're great, they're awesome. We've reached the point with all that. We are now scratch building buildings because we want buildings that were really in Glacier Park, somewhere between Shelby and Whitefish.
Right.
And I mean, we are crazy enough. I belong to the Great Northern Railway Historical Society since 1993, like 30 years now. So we're able to get the actual drawings, blueprints of the station, which we're doing right now. We're building another one of them. So it's just nice when you actually tour the Glacier Line. We have like some of the historical statues and landmarks that are actually there in real life. And on the layout on the fascia, we take a picture of the historical sign in real life in Montana and paste it on the Glacier Line in front of the
it's framed on the front
model object.
Yeah.
So it's really neat. The things you're seeing there are really there in real life. So we're not all the way here, but hopefully sometime down the road, like in the next 5 or 10 years, that literally everything on the line will be a building that either exists or has existed.
So what's your?
I don't like seeing, when you look at a layout, it's like, oh yeah, that's a building from Woodland Scenics. That's a building from Menard. That's a building from whatever. I kind of get tired of that. And so getting to the point that you are scratch building your own things, or this started as I can see that this is a building, but I know it started as this kit. So yeah, I think the scratch building is the way to go. But I think kind of like you, at one point I needed buildings.
Right.
Exactly.
I can't build them. I need them today. I can buy something today, but it's going to take me weeks, months, whatever to build things. So, and I can only build things so fast, right? So how do I have something that feels complete and that I can share with people and invite people to come and see? Or is it always just, well, it's always, I only have a couple buildings because I've only got so much time. Well,
yeah,
and I'm happy to, hey, I'm happy to sell the buildings off that were there as a placeholder.
Well, what I'm hearing the same kind of discussion that I had 2 weeks ago with a bunch of O-scalers, 2-rail O-scalers. And, it's amazing to me that for all practical purposes, you're buying from the same manufacturers. For all practical purposes, you're using the same kind of tools, the same kind of materials. You're trying to create the same kind of vignettes or dioramas as part of your model railroad. And you're trying to have some kind of an operating scheme where people can come in and operate your railroad and enjoy the model railroading. So I don't see a difference except the 3-rail track.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
There may have been a time way back when, but I think O scale really turned in the early 1990s with Mike Wolf of MTH Trains, because at this point, most O scale manufacturers were still making the small, undersized toy train. And there's nothing wrong with, I mean, I know a lot of people enjoy that, and I say more power to them. I mean, Connie and I, we have a Christmas layout appropriate with 3-rail, right?
Yeah.
And we actually take it to our town hall for the public to enjoy, and we'll do that. And we have cutesy little Halloween layouts, but our serious layouts at home that we like to just create a more realistic environment, less again having the 3 rails, but we try to weather, and there's just so much going on with background and all that stuff that it distracts you, and not a lot of people even realize it's a 3-rail track. And before I talk too much like I usually do, Jim, Mr. Bob Bartizak there has joined us.
Yes.
And he has my second favorite layout on the planet behind mine.
Bob, I didn't want to introduce,
and I haven't seen it yet either.
Bob, I didn't want to introduce you and you not be here. So I looked at my screen and I didn't see your name. So I decided I'm not going to introduce him. He could just show up when he gets here.
I obviously misinterpreted the message and got here late. So sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Bob, tell us a little bit about your involvement in O-gauge scale.
Well, I really started with the scale aspects in the early 90s. Prior to probably the mid 80s, there in 3-rail, there really was precious little available that was a scale model. It was Lionel stuff, and they had made some scale stuff back in the 40s, and some of their post-war locomotives were more toward the scale size, but they were pretty toyish actually. The first ones that started were Williams, and that was when Mike Wolf got involved with Jerry Williams and importing some brass stuff in the mid 80s. So Williams brought in some scale brass, then Weaver continued on with scale brass, and then when Mike started his own company, he started doing some more scale stuff, and it kind of grew from there. So from the mid 80s through the mid 90s, you had at least Williams, Weaver, MTH, and Sunset 3rd Rail released their first locomotive on their own design, was a Pensy Decapod, and that was in 1994, I believe. So between 1985 and 1995 was really the birth of scale equipment being available for 3-rail. And for freight cars, Weaver models started out as a 2-rail outfit. Bob Weaver was a 2-rail O-scale modeler, and just by changing the trucks and couplers, you can make all of those scale cars into scale cars that run on 3-rail track.
Right.
So they were probably the first ones to have a good selection of 3-rail scale rolling stock. And then other manufacturers get in on it, and 20 years later, here we are today.
Well, when I started with Lionel, and I had a basement, and it was full of Lionel. And this goes back, I guess, to the late 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, somewhere in through there. And I had gone to a train show, and I saw on a table some free NMRA bulletins. And I picked up a couple of them because I wasn't a member of the NMRA. I figured, well, I'll find out what this is all about. And I took them home, and I saw something about an MMR program. And I thought, well, geez, I've been a Lionel operator all my life. I might as well just get that designation, because it can't be that hard. With all of the Lionel stuff that I've got, my basement's full of a train layout over here. So, being a master model railroader, how hard can that be? So I called up the local guys and said, come on over. I'd like to show you my railroad, see what you guys think about it. Well, they came over and laughed and wanted to know what they were there for. And I said, well, I want to get the designation of MMR and what certificates can you give me today? And they laughed some more. And, I thought, well, this is going well because everybody seems to be so happy. And they left. Needless to say, I didn't exactly feel overwhelmingly welcomed by the NMRA because I was a three-rail line L guy. And regardless of what I had on the layout, or regardless of the scratch build structures I had or whatever, it just wasn't enough. I knew if we get one of the guys looked at me and he looked at some of my line L track and he must have seen dust. And he said, oh, you tried to ballast the track? And I said, no, I don't have any ballast on there. It must be dust. And he was, I figured, that probably killed me right there as far as that certificate. But now I understand that the NMRA is more receptive to three rail operators. It used to be, at least back when I was involved heavily with it, being a line L operator was something that the NMRA just wasn't interested in. They were a scale organization. They didn't consider three rail scale. Therefore, don't call us, we'll call you kind of thing. Now I hear that's changing. Do you all find that to be true?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I'm an officer in the NMRA. I'm a director in the regional, and for my local division, the Central Indiana division, I'm actually the assistant superintendent, and we are very welcoming to everyone, regardless of the scale they've got. Everyone's welcome, and everyone always gets a laugh out of me because I always introduce myself as the man with the evil third rail. So, the evil third rail track, but there have been a couple of other people, but still, if you're going to participate in the AP program, and I also serve on an AP committee, and I've actually just turned in my paperwork on my 7th certificate. So hopefully they'll get that processed and I'll have my MMR. I'll be Connie, and Connie's going to get hers. She's still got a little way to go. She's going to get the official certificate. She'll reach that in May of 24. And my understanding is we'll be the 4th married couple to be MMRs, and we'll be the first three-rail married couple. So we may be the only people ever, who knows, but yeah,
do you know the first three-rail MMR? Do you know who that was?
Yeah, you told me the gentleman's name. Because I thought it was John. I thought it was John Siegel, who was 601. And what's the gentleman's name?
Ronnie Rise. RIS.
You did say that.
Yeah, I posted that on some sites. I had no idea.
Yep, and he was talk about a super modeler. He did everything scratch. He was something to behold, and he used to call me all the time and encourage me and laugh with me about how I was being received in the NMRA. And if it hadn't been partly because of Ronnie, I don't think I'd have continued on even trying back then, because it was really a hassle. But I'm glad I did. And I congratulate you on achieving it. And Connie, if all you lack is the official, then that's nothing. I mean, that's just time. So congratulations to you.
I'm secretary of the Midwest region, so I've got a number of meetings to take care of and paperwork to do, and it's a good experience. I actually enjoy being involved with the region.
Yeah, because you find out lots of things you wouldn't otherwise, and actually be the thrill of my life. But I'm actually running for the national board for the NMRA this upcoming election for the Central District Director position. And I'm hoping to have direct access and information from the board. I talk with a couple of the directors anyway, and occasionally Gordy Robinson, I'll chat with him, but I try not to too much because everyone always wants his time, and he's busy enough with that and being married and jobs and children. And so I try not to bother him too much, but it would be I would love to be on the inside, because you can learn so much more, actually being there and being part of the national board is an experience I hope that one day I can get there.
Well, that's great. I'll be glad to vote for you. And Gordon is such a neat guy. He really is. His division in Scotland, he wanted that division to be the first digital division in the NMRA. Mm-hmm. And that's when I first met him. And this goes back years ago now. I forget how many. But he is really something. I can't say enough nice things about him and what he's now achieving for the NMRA. I think it's wonderful.
Yes.
Don, Bob, are you all involved in the NMRA or any organizations like that? I mean, what do you find as far as acceptance of three railers?
I would tell you, just listening to John here, that my impression might be dated. I think it sounds much more like what you were describing earlier. You know, when I had some interest, it was like, oh yeah, no, that's not what we're about. And that, again, that's, let's say 15 plus years ago, and so I never looked back. You know, it was well, that's not what we do. And so, I mean, yeah, I am a member of the TCA, the Train Collectors Association. But as and I've been in model railroad clubs before. I worked in HO for several years. Helped. You were talking about your 501c3. I actually helped that organization file and do that paperwork back in the day, so that they are today. And that has, as you were mentioning earlier, helped tremendously with donations, support, that type of thing. I mean, they went from renting a building to being able to actually purchase their own building, and they had to move the layout, but that was huge for them to be able to, have a permanent place,
sure,
and not have to worry about having, a lease go bad or fall out from underneath them.
So Bob, how about you?
I really haven't had any problems at all with it being accepted by NMRA, different groups within NMRA. Locally here in Cincinnati, that they come and visit my layout a couple of times a year when they have meetings that are close. They have a meeting, and then they have two layouts open typically after the meeting. Right. And even though I'm 30 miles outside of Cincinnati itself, they'll come here when they've got a meeting on the north side. I've given clinics at meetings on topics like scenery, operation, layout design, diesel locomotive detailing, weathering. Those off the top of my head. I've done it at meetings in Dayton and Cincinnati and in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has a really active NMRA group, and there are several guys that are doing three rail the way that we do it in the Pittsburgh area, and they're all part of the NMRA Division 2 out there, so they also are aware of the kind of stuff we're doing. I think, if you look at our layouts, the scenery is as good as anybody's. The trains run as well or better than anybody. Those of us that host operating sessions, the stuff stays on the track and runs slow, and all the guys that come to my place say, "This is great. You can read the car numbers."
Yeah, I understand.
So it really hasn't been a problem.
Is O gauge scale, is that a builder scale, would you say? Or is it becoming a builder scale rather than open the box and put it on the table?
I think it's a transition. I think you can start with some, and you can upgrade as your time and abilities allow you to.
Yeah, I think that's right. You have the ability to get stuff out of the box and on the railroad and get up and running quickly with your equipment, and also plop some ready to run buildings out of the boxes and on there, so you have something to get started. And then I think what we're all doing is going back and reworking some of that, whether you rework the cars by weathering them, whether you rework the locomotives by remotoring them or regearing them, adding detail to them, weathering, all that kind of stuff, and then scratch building structures to actually represent something that is unique to the railroad.
What about excuse me, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I echo what John was saying is, and Don as well. I don't want somebody to come down and say, oh, there's that building from MTH and there's that building from Woodland Scenics. If I've got one of those, I try to modify it so that you can't recognize it in 5 seconds as being that particular model.
What about the electronics between what Lionel has, what Mike had, what, you know, the different manufacturers? Is that any issue or problem at all?
I think it's a major issue in 3-rail. We do not have an open standard like DCC and the other scales. Yeah. At the time that command control came into O-Gauge, which was the early 90s, there weren't any DCC decoders that could handle the amperage of the motors that we had at that time, which were the old Lionel post-war style field wound motors that sucked up 4 or 5 amps a piece.
Right.
So I know Lionel looked briefly at DCC before they came out with their Trainmaster command control system, and the equipment wasn't there to be able to use it. Plus, the signal to the locomotive is embedded as part of the current that's on the railroad. In other words, DCC uses that pulse DC, where you get a positive pulse and then it drops to 0. Well, in that instant when it's 0, that's where the command that a locomotive is sent, and then it pops up to voltage again. And when you've got a thing like a roller rolling along the track, and if you've ever run your 3-rail trains in the dark, you get a little sparking off that center rail on the pickup roller. Well, that sparking is very noisy and can mess with that DCC signal. So for several reasons, Lionel went away from that. And when they introduced their system, TMCC, it's a radio-based system. So they use the track as part of a radio antenna and use your house wiring as the other side of it. So they're not depending on track at all. It's all broadcast over the airwaves. Mm-hmm. MTH took a different approach, and theirs is DCC like, but track has to be super squeaky clean, I believe, for it to work. At least the guys around here that have it. My feeling of a weakness is that Lionel developed a proprietary system. MTH developed a proprietary system that's completely different than Lionel's, and we have a compatibility problem. You've got to either convert your equipment all to one system, or you got to live with 2 of them. And what's happening these days is that, due to what they're blaming on supply chain problems, but some of the electronic chips going out of production, currently you can't buy either system.
Right.
New. If you wanted this, if you were starting a 3-rail layout today, you're pretty well screwed when it comes to command control, unless you buy on the used market.
Yeah, but the used market is out of sight right now because of supply and demand. So I wouldn't do it. The one thing that I would add, though, that I too appreciate was that Lionel, while they have their own system, it is an open system in that you can program to it. So you can, plug into the network and, send serial-based commands out and see what's going on. So you can build devices, and I've done that with Raspberry Pis and Arduinos to actually do things with the Lionel systems. So, I can, I built a PCB and a circuit board to manage the hidden yard that I have on my layout. But it plugs in with a serial port, and I can use a line arrow remote to control everything that's going on down there. Now you can buy devices that do similar things, because for me, the part of the hobby is the building and the learning. I have probably $25 into components to do what I want to do, where buying that device from Lionel is $100.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed learning how to do it.
Yeah.
So again, part of that for me is the enjoyment of that learning.
So it sounds to me like the new person going into 3-rail scale modeling almost needs to pick a manufacturer and stick with them. Otherwise, he's going to be in a big mess down the road trying to get compatibility.
Well, this is a long story for the subject of this broadcast tonight. The short version is DCS broke off and formed its own company in Michigan. I know they're going to be coming out with a new TIU relatively soon. And so you can pick your own definition of relatively soon. I've heard that from many people.
What is TIU?
Excuse me. The track interface unit, the brains of the DCS system is what that is. Just by dumb luck, I ended up getting a DCS system when I first started in this in 2010 or 11, simply because we do Great Northern, and they were producing a Hustle Muscle engine, one of Great Northern's most famous engines at that time. So that's how we ended up with DCS. And I'm glad we did, because you can get into conversations with people and start wars about which system is better, which system is worse. And it's like everything else, there are pluses and minuses. But what I do like better about the DCS, and again, I got it first by dumb luck, is you can actually buy a Lionel command base, Lionel Legacy. There's a special cord that you can get. You can hook the Legacy base directly into the DCS base, and you can control Lionel locomotives with the DCS remote. You cannot reach all of the functions with it, but you can make it go forward, backward, all the basic stuff that most anyone would need to do. You can do that with it. So I'm glad that is a convenience that we've got going with that. But I definitely prefer the DCS method, because the signal is being transmitted through the center rail to the locomotives. And because we do have the oversized roller and the oversized rail, we've got, probably over 1,000 feet of track. If we have to clean that track twice a year, that's a lot.
Gotcha.
So we've got good signal strength everywhere, and our problems are very, very minor in that regard. We're fortunate.
With the electrical that you all are using for your 3-rail, does this LCC that the NMRA is coming out with and trying to get accepted, is that going to be important for you in how you're operating your model railroads?
I can't answer because I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not sure I know what it is either.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, not for me either. I mean, I have a little bit of an understanding as to the kind of things that it does, and I already do all of that stuff through other means. So
Gotcha.
no
Okay,
need to get involved with it.
I understand. How is O gauge scale, how is it being promoted? Is it getting the promotion that you all feel it deserves, or where is the promotion of this? Who is promoting this to model railroaders rather than the 2-rail? I hear about 2-rail all the time. 3-rail scale, I don't hear about.
I would agree with you. I think we're a fraction of what's going on there. it's an additional commitment above and beyond, I mean, I know a lot of people are building layouts that are running 3-rail and just running the, traditional couplers, traditional, even though they're buying scale stuff, they're not taking the extra steps that I do for, things like weathering, scale couplers, other fixed pilots, other adjustments that we make. Again, to add to our realism, our illusion of realism. So yeah, I think there's a step. I mean, people see it that know what it is and what we've done different, and they like it. It's when do you make the commitment and make the jump. So,
but it's really not being promoted.
No, I would agree with you.
I mean, I don't hear anybody really out there. This is the first show that I've found that anybody has really tried to approach this. In fact, when I first started talking to TCA on my show, I had several people on the show saying, you've got to choose. You can either be toy trains or you can be scale, but you can't be both. Well, I come from 3-rail, so to me, it's all model railroading. It's all model building, and it's all buying from the same manufacturers. And frankly, I've seen some beautiful 3-rail layouts as I have some beautiful 2-rail layouts. So it's all modeling to me. But I
remember that they're all toys. They're all toys.
Yeah,
no matter how pretty they are, they're toys.
Yeah,
right. And the guy who's trying to it's a scale model, or it's a scale. No, it's not. You're spending disposable income on it. It's a toy.
Yeah.
Right. I don't care if you're buying a Corvette or you're buying a Lionel engine. If it's disposable income, it's a toy.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're supposed to have fun with it. That's the whole point.
Right. They're absolutely.
And I'll tell you, we really enjoy what we do. Getting like the scratch building, the realism thing. I'll tell you, scratch building for us, and this is just something we've really started in the past year. It had to cost these poor manufacturers a fortune with us, because we've got all different eras of cars. And when we run them to show off, we'll be sure that the consists that we're running are era appropriate, and our scenery is really generic. So you really, unless you're really knowledgeable about Glacier Park history, like by buying my book, you wouldn't know. I mean, you wouldn't know, sometimes information is not a good thing. But we started building cars out of wood. And I will tell you what, I will never, ever buy another plastic model that's supposed to represent wood, because
it doesn't.
Having these actual wood cars and stuff, I mean, it's just, we really enjoy them. I mean, they really look good. But as good as they look, and I mean, we put every strip of wood and one of these passenger cars we built, it was crazy. It had like 621 separate parts. It's a special car called an open top observation car that the Great Northern ran back from like 1913 through the early 1940s. And it's awesome. It's wonderful, but it's a toy.
Yeah.
It runs on 3-rail track. And if I wanted it to, in 5 minutes, I could unscrew the screw on the bottom and pop on the Katy coupler and, screw on the scale size trucks, and it would be a 2-rail car. So there's really difference into people in the general population, not model railroad nuts, the normal 99.9%, not us people. They couldn't care less when they come down to that layout. And they're just enjoying it. And I think it's wonderful that people do, all the super detailed, realistic work that they do. But no matter what, it's even as a person that's got the cutesy little train around their Christmas tree, I like it. I enjoy it. So life is too short to be that serious over something not that important.
Where is it going in the future? Where is O-scale gauge 5 years from now?
It's still a niche. I think there will be people that will continue to engage it and enjoy it. but yeah, that's not even fair. The manufacturers are starting to embrace it. They're making the car, like the MTH cars and the Lionel cars and the Atlas cars are scale coupler compatible. So, you know, they usually have the adapters you need in the box. So, you know, you just have to throw the KD coupler in there. So it's not like the manufacturers definitely aren't ignoring it, but and they do promote the fact that you can, you know, Mike's had the 3.2 conversion, so you could run 2-rail DCC or you could run 3-rail, you know, DCS, you know, and those were just change the wheel sets out and throw some switches inside the body. So it's not like that, you know, but I don't expect to see, you know, deep flange trucks with scale couplers out of the box.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, I'm sorry, Jim. I think the biggest change that may be coming, and you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I'd like to see it because ultimately I think would be best for the hobby is the new dead rail systems. Battery technology is involved at an incredible rate, even in automobiles. And I think one day, I mean, especially in O-scale engines, we'll just have a battery dropped inside, and then I've got enough wires under that layout down there to literally wire somebody's house with. Really do.
Yeah.
And I mean, it would be, you know, you don't have to worry about cleaning the track and all that. And that's the biggest next change that I think is going to be coming. And ironically, the prototype is in the testing stage of doing that kind of stuff right now.
So what would you tell a new modeler? Would you tell him to go into this scale and this kind of a niche of O scale, or would you tell him, no, it's just not worth the extra effort?
I think everybody has to make what they want out of the hobby, right? It's something to enjoy. It's something that I'm willing to talk about and share what I'm doing. I mean, you know, but it's not for everyone. You know, I mean, people, again, you still want people that want, you know, their layout to look like, you know, a showroom 50s Lionel layout, and that's great. You know, I spent a bunch of time in an HO club. I learned a bunch of techniques there about how to do better modeling, how to do better scenery, and I brought that into my, you know, 3-rail Lionel world. So, you know, I think it always depends on where you start from, you know, and what you think's achievable, right? I mean, there's some people that this is the best they can do because that it's what they know. You know, and we're not all going to be master modelers. You know, we're all going to hit whatever our limit is, and that's okay, right? And if you enjoy it, and you know, what's the saying? It's my railroad is the first rule. You know, it is my railroad, and you know, I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would think that. I think that, you know, I would agree with some of the challenges right now. And I wasn't thinking about this when we talked about with control systems. You know, there are new things that are coming out that are Bluetooth compatible. So you can actually run them right out of the box with an app on your phone. I'm not really a fan of my phone as my control device.
We're the same way. I don't want to use my phone for that.
Right.
I use it for enough other things. I don't need you to do that.
I mean, it's great.
I am disappointed about the brand new TIU because actually they're taking out the megahertz receiver that the remotes won't work. And I'm like you, somebody somewhere is going to be clever and they're going to reverse when we first started getting the phone compatibility, you had to add the box to the TIUs to use the phone. Someone will come up with add the piece of hardware to the new TIU that'll let you use the old remote. Because I'm like, I like the old, I do not want to burn up my phone battery in my hands. I'm a pretty big person, and that in my phone's a decent size, but it's just hard for me. But I'll be the first, someone's probably screaming somewhere. I'll be the first to admit it's easier to use. And someone told me it's easier to use the laptop and control it, pushing and touching the screen on there, but versus the thumb wheel, you know.
I don't agree.
But we've got this huge basement, and our operators are not going to be carrying around laptops. It's just not practical.
The problem with the touch screens, that you have on a laptop or excuse me, on a tablet or a phone is the accidental mistouch, right? You drag your thumb across something, and the next thing you know is you went from a nice scale, 10 miles an hour to 120 miles an hour, right? Because it was an inadvertent touch on that screen, right? And so, I like the scroll wheel because, it's a tactile feel. When you're moving that wheel up or down, or if you got the dial on a line element, when you're twisting it, right? Yeah. And you get that tactile response, and I twist it a little bit and it's going a little faster. I twist a lot.
The only thing I wish the engineers would have done, if they had the wheel, I wish they would have had a separate button for like the select command, the enter command, instead of the wheel for both.
Be in the click, yeah.
I mean, that would have been a little, but then I say that and somebody else will tell you exactly the opposite. So it just, I've just used the DCS remote so much now. I mean, I don't even have to look at them. I mean, I could do them in my sleep because I've done them so long. But I like the feel of them, this even versus the Lionel one. The Lionel one's even bigger, and I just like the DCS. But all this is a matter of personal preference. Yes, it has nothing to do with better or worse. Or I mean, they're excellent systems. They are.
Well, listen, we've been talking about some things, and you all have made some great points about the advantage of being in the scale and the gauge that you work in, as well as some of the problems or the issues involved in being in there. Well, those same issues, different issues, maybe different problems, different advantages. You could have that kind of discussion about any scale. So, I appreciate all of the comments that you've made, but we've been talking for quite a while now. Do you have any final comments that you'd like to make about O-gauge scale modeling?
Well, I'm gonna steal from Bob Bartizak. I only steal from the best. Kind of.
I hope it's the good stuff.
It's the good stuff. The Pennsylvania and Western, which Bob had, which is wonderful. And if you're ever near Cincinnati and he allows you to come and see it, definitely take it there. It's just, it's just super, super well done. But he said something on a video. We both have our layouts on video that was shot by O-Gauge Railroading Magazine. And he was in a quandary about what scale he was going to build. He was an N scaler from long, long ago. And he was considering HO scale. And he said, here in the Cincinnati area alone, there's like, 12, 15, 20, there's a glut of HO railroads. And that kind of stuck in my mind. And I was an HO scale guy too. And I'm like, I want to do something here. When we do something, I want it to be different. I want to do something different that's not in everybody else's layout. And what Bob said, like I said, really stuck in my mind because I am confident that the reason the Glacier Line has got all the exposure it's got and all the videos it's got is because it has 3 rails. If it would have been another HO layout, you would have never heard of it. And that's not a knock on HO because it's awesome. And I know guys that have HO scale layouts that would just absolutely blow your mind. One gentleman has a 2,800 square foot basement in Carmel, Indiana, and it's just run by computers and it's just out of this world. It should be in a museum somewhere. Having said that, I'm still glad that I have the 3 rail layout that I do, and I'm a Great Northern person in the state of Indiana, which you're not going to find that many people in Great Northern right here in central Indiana. There are a handful.
Gotcha. Bob?
Yeah, I think if you think you might be interested in doing something with 3 rail scale, recognize that there will be some challenges. Availability of stuff is one. Depending on what you want to do for a layout, space can be a big consideration on an individual item basis. cost is there because the cost is more than other scales, although, damn, I hear the local guys talk about these $80 HO freight cars and
Yeah.
what HO locomotives are going for now. And if you're willing to go to the secondhand market, or secondary market, O scale is no more expensive than HO for some of that stuff. But what is nice about it, I think a couple of things. One is that it is different. Here in Cincinnati, there's a couple of dozen, magazine quality, museum quality HO layouts. Just gorgeous. Lots of different railroads represented and time periods. One of the local NMRA guys kind of keeps a tote board of magazine articles about local layouts, and all of these layouts have been in multiple magazines, very well featured, and they're gorgeous. But there's a couple of dozen of them. In 3-rail, there's mine, and that's it. And I think that's pretty cool. The other thing about 3-rail scale is if you do resized structures and you attempt to have your scenery as close as you can get it to prototypical. I model the Western Pennsylvania mountains, so I can't have super gigantic mountain peaks. But when I designed the basement, we put in 9-foot ceilings. So some of those mountaintops are 8 or 8.5 feet off the floor. Most of the surface of the layout is 50 to 52 inches. And when you put a scale size factory structure on there, the water tanks on the roof are up around 72, 73 inches. So you really are looking up at the scenery and the structures. You get an impression of size. I call it the O scale wow factor. People come down in the basement and it's impressive, the size of things. I had a visitor for one of the NMRA convention open houses, came and he stood at the bottom of the stairs and looked, and then he went in a little bit and looked, and I went over to welcome him, and he says, "Are you the layout owner?" I said, "Yeah, I am." He says, "I model HO," and he's putting his hands like this, showing me a small little thing. And he says, "I've been on a lot of really nice HO layouts, but this is just so in your face." So 3-rail scale can really be in your face if it's done well.
Yeah.
Don, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's a little different for here because I'm actually in an area that there is a lot of O scale. I expect it's because of in Michigan here, with Lionel's history up in Mount Clemens, there does seem to be a lot of good quality O scale and model railroads around here. I think the other thing though, to kind of what Bob's saying is, yes, you need to make things big, but you also need to figure out how you're going to do some sort of selective compression, because you need it to, great. I could build a scale roundhouse and take up 3/4 of my basement to just keep that in scale, right? So maybe I don't have so the Junior Locomotive Works is the we don't have a roundhouse, we have the Locomotive Works. So the Locomotive Works is 26 bays long. Well, I had the building is scale size, but it's only 11 bays because I don't have enough room to make. So that's my selective compression. So I can be at scale, but still be compressed. So I think there's those kind of things you have to figure out.
The best thing about O scale is it's big.
It's big.
Absolutely. The worst thing about O scale is it's big.
Thing.
It's big. Right. And it doesn't matter what radius curves you decided to start with, you should have gone bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I thought the 072 curves that I was going to put in, that was going to be great. And that's my minimum, and I wish my minimum was 108.
Yeah.
Right. And even, but I'm sure if I did 108, I'd be going, it should be bigger.
Took the words out of my mouth because I thought I was going to stay under control, especially like with not the full size. I've got like scale 21-inch Great Northern passenger cars. And when they're on my 96 diameter curves, they're great. And I'm like you, I was inexperienced. When I started, I told myself, okay, 72 diameter, which is 36 radius for the HO people. I said, that's been the standard forever. Anything in O scale will operate on a 72 diameter curve. But just like I wrote about in my book, just because it works on the curve
doesn't mean it looks right.
It will look good. You don't want it to look like the wild mouse at the amusement park.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like, if I ever did this again, and because my 84 footers will stay centered on the 96 diameter curve, which is a 48 radius, that would be my bare bones on my main line.
Right.
Yeah.
But
There's
again,
no way I run a big boy on our line. There's no way it wouldn't fit.
We can, but it would look really
Yeah,
stupid.
I don't think it would fit through one of the tunnels. So.
Yeah.
we had a guy bring over a Premier full size R2, a Challenger the Great Northern had, and oh my gosh, there were a couple of spots in the layouts going through like hidden reverse loops. Mine's basically a point-to-point layout, but there is a reverse loop on each end hidden. It would hit the supports.
Yeah.
I've had to do some modifications because I thought I was going to stay with basically no longer than 20-inch diesel locomotives, and that almost worked out. It's kind of like we added our third turntable. We were trying to stay under control of engines too. Now we're up to the third turntable.
Well, listen, guys, it's been a real pleasure for me to meet you all and to hear you. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time and sharing your thoughts about O-scale gauge. It's really been interesting to me. Interestingly enough, I don't have 3-rail track. I have 2-rail track and overhead wire. That's my third rail. So I take my power from my overhead wire. I run straight DC with homemade little handheld throttles with diodes. So I can hold one in each hand and run 2 trolleys at a time. And that's the extent of my wiring. But that's just me. But I thank you so much for sharing what O-gauge scale is all about and for being here this evening. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Enjoyed it. Thank you. Well, listen, that's basically our show for this evening. I really enjoyed the presentation that the panel gave us on O-gauge scale. And it just goes to show that a lot of some of the things that you've heard about people that have 3-rail track may not be all that true, because what these people are doing is exactly what I'm doing and exactly what an awful lot of 2-rail scale modelers are doing, regardless of what scale or gauge they're working in. Well, with that said, thank you so much for being here tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope most importantly, you learned something. I hope that you'll subscribe to our website, newtracksmodeling.com. You'll get an email and be able to log in on each one of our Zoom meetings. I hope you'll also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We now have over 750 videos on that channel that we've made on each show that we've ever done. So I hope that you'll subscribe to it and ring the bell so that you'll get notices of the shows that we do on YouTube that you can only see live from our YouTube channel, New Tracks Modeling. Lastly, if you see a video, please take a look at the advertisement on it if you like it, because that's how we make any money at all from our YouTube videos. And if you can see your way clear to donate something to our Patreon account, New Tracks Modeling, we thank you so much in advance for doing that. So now let me go to the end of our show, which is where we'll show you our caboose video. And that, folks, is our show for this evening. Thanks so much again for being here. And to all of you, until next time, happy modeling.